Ashwagandha is everywhere right now. Stress gummies, sleep powders, testosterone boosters. According to the internet, it lowers stress, boosts energy, balances hormones, and somehow fixes modern life, which is impressive because modern life has beaten planners, therapy, and the collective human attempt to just relax. So, if a beige capsule solved it, that's a bold claim. Most videos about ashwagandha do one of two things. They either tell you it's a miracle or they tell you it's useless. Neither is actually helpful. Because the real question isn't, does ashwagandha work? It's who does it work for and what does it actually change? And how do you know before you buy it whether it's worth trying? By the end of this video, you'll have a simple way to answer that for ashwagandha and pretty much any supplement. And full disclosure, my cousin tried ashwagandha, not because of a doctor or a study, because someone on Instagram said it would reset her nervous system, which is not a medical phrase. It did something, just not what the label promised. Stick around, because what happened to her is a perfect example of how supplements like this get misunderstood, even when they technically work. Welcome to Health Sense or Nonsense. I'm Marcus, a research scientist and the wellness watchdog. I read the human clinical research so you don't have to squint at PubMed journals like it's a magic eye poster. Quick one note before we go any further. This video is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. I'm explaining what the research shows on average, not what's right for you personally. Always talk with your healthcare provider before starting or stopping any supplement, especially if you have a medical condition or take prescription medications. All peer-reviewed sources are linked below. Let's get into it. Before we talk claims, we need to talk about what ashwagandha actually is. Ashwagandha withania somnifera is an herb traditionally used for stress and fatigue, which is reassuring, honestly, because it means people were stressed long before email, Wi-Fi, and quick calls that are never quick. They just didn't get notifications about it. Most modern supplements don't use the whole plant. They use concentrated root extracts, often standardized for compounds called withanolides. That detail matters more than most labels let on. Because the studies don't test ashwagandha vibes, they test specific extracts at specific doses for specific outcomes. And this is where supplement marketing often starts freelancing. One important nuance here is that not all ashwagandha supplements are interchangeable. Different products use different extraction methods, different doses, and different levels of standardization. That means two people can both take ashwagandha and have very different experiences, not because one of them is wrong, but because they may not actually be taking the same thing. This is one of those reasons translating research into real life is tricky. Studies test a defined product under controlled conditions, while store shelves are full of loosely defined versions that may or may not resemble what was studied. When you look at human trials, researchers aren't studying everything people claim. Most studies focus on perceived stress and anxiety, sleep quality, cortisol levels, and sometimes physical performance or testosterone, and usually in very specific populations. These trials are typically small and short-term, often lasting 6 weeks to 12 weeks. So if you hear claims about fixing burnout, preventing disease, or permanently optimizing hormones, that's already beyond what's been tested. That doesn't mean ashwagandha is useless. It means the evidence has boundaries. This is where ashwagandha performs best. When researchers actually test ashwagandha against a placebo, people tend to report less stress. Not calm, not zen, not less on edge. That's the pattern, not a personality transplant or an inner peace on demand. Just a modest reduction in how sharp stress feels. Some studies also show reductions in cortisol, a hormone involved in the stress response. Now, expectations matter. People don't suddenly become calm. If that happened, airports would feel legally suspicious. What usually happens is subtler. The edge comes down a bit. Emotional reactivity softens and people feel more even. For some people, that's meaningful. For others, it's barely noticeable. And that difference matters because supplements don't flip switches. They nudge systems. Quick pause. This explains a lot. If ashwagandha works, why do some people swear it changed their life while others feel nothing? It's not placebo versus real. It's baseline stress. People who start out more stressed tend to see bigger effects. If your stress is already low, there's not much room to improve. This single detail explains most supplement disappointment. And yes, this matters for my cousin. We'll come back to that. Quick side note. If this kind of no hype, evidence-based breakdown is useful so far, like the video and subscribe. It really helps the channel. It tells me to keep doing deep dives like this instead of chasing whatever wellness trend is loudest this week. All right, let's keep going. Sleep is where claims get less consistent. Some studies show small improvements in sleep quality, sleep onset, and perceived restfulness, especially in people who already struggle with sleep. Other studies show little to no effect. Here's the key point. Ashwagandha is not a sedative. It doesn't knock you out. If sleep improves, it's likely because stress improved first. If your sleep problem is late caffeine, inconsistent schedules, screen exposure, or untreated sleep apnea, ashwagandha won't fix that. It's not a sleep drug. It's a stress-adjacent tool. This is where marketing gets enthusiastic. Some trials, mostly in younger men doing resistance training, show modest improvements in strength, muscle size, and testosterone levels. But context matters. These studies are small, short, and population specific. When you look at older adults or general populations, results are far less consistent. So when a supplement promises to optimize hormones for everyone or boost testosterone naturally, that's a red flag. Hormones don't work like that. And if they did, endocrinology would be a much shorter subject. Before anyone runs out and buys a bottle, we need to talk about limitations. Most studies are short-term, small, and use different extract and doses, which means the evidence is suggestive, not definitive, useful, but not nearly as confident as some of the people explaining it online, who somehow become experts right after the thumbnail loads. In clinical trials, ashwagandha is generally well tolerated. Some people report stomach upset or drowsiness. There are also rare reports of liver injury linked to ashwagandha supplements. Rare doesn't mean common, but it does mean possible, especially at higher doses or with low quality products. Natural doesn't mean harmless, it means unregulated. Ashwagandha is not useless, but it's also not doing what most people think it's doing. It makes health sense as a conditional tool. It may help people with elevated stress, stress-related sleep issues, or short-term high-load periods. It becomes nonsense when marketed as a cure-all, a hormone hack, or a replacement for sleep boundaries or mental health care. It's a tool, it's not a solution. Here's the practical part. If your goal is stress reduction, ashwagandha competes with consistent sleep timing, resistance training, aerobic exercise, reducing alcohol, and basic cognitive strategies. None of those come in a bottle, but they outperform supplements in nearly every outcome that matters. If you're doing one of those and hoping a capsule fixes everything, that's not wellness. That's outsourcing your responsibility. And stay with me to the end, because what happened when my cousin tried ashwagandha ties all of this together and explains why something can technically work and still feel wrong. All right, story time. My cousin started taking ashwagandha during a stretch of poor sleep, high workload, and doing that thing where you say, "I'm fine," but louder every time. She bought a stress gummy because, of course, it was a gummy. For the first few days, she felt different. Not calmer, not energized, just kind of muted. Her word. Then came the text. "I don't feel stressed, but I also don't feel motivated. Is that normal?" And here's the key. Nothing was wrong. What she experienced lines up perfectly with what the research shows. Ashwagandha doesn't selectively remove stress and leave everything else untouched. It nudges the stress response down overall. For some people, that's relief. For others, especially if stress is fueling momentum, it can feel like someone turned the volume down on everything. That doesn't mean it failed, it means it's blunt. And that's the mistake people make. They expect supplements to be precision tools when most are closer to dimmer switches. So she stopped taking it, not because it didn't work, but because it wasn't solving her problem. What helped more? Consistent sleep, less late night work, and annoyingly going outside. No gummies required. Here's the real takeaway. Before trying any supplement, ask what outcome was actually studied, who was studied, and at what dose and extract, for how long, and is my situation similar? If you can't answer those, you're not buying evidence, you're buying hope. Ashwagandha doesn't fix modern life, but neither does ignoring stress until it becomes something clinical. If you understand what a supplement can do and can't do, you'll waste less money and make better decisions. That's the goal here. Health sense, not hype, not nonsense. And if this helped you think more clearly about supplements like this, that's actually what this channel is for. If you want more evidence-based breakdowns like this, subscribe to Health Sense or Nonsense. I'm Marcus, the Wellness Watchdog, and I'll see you in the next one.